Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, Principal Atmospheric Scientist at Nutrient Ag Solutions, and I want to thank you for watching this weekly AgWeather update brought to you by the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina. Now, at the end of this video, I do have brand new all long-range weather forecast information that looks through the rest of spring and summer, so sit tight. I want to set up the story for that by going through what we're going to experience over the next couple of weeks. Now, the first map you've been looking at here shows you cumulative downward solar flux. And it's for the time period of February 4th through March the 6th. So it's a 30-day window here. And why I'm showing you this is because this map represents how much sunshine we've seen. And these colors here, they would represent less than normal, and these would be greater than normal. And it has been very cloudy. I don't think I have to tell anybody here that for a while there we've missed the sun. Now, I've got good news coming in the near term. You're going to see a lot of sunshine this week. But we can add to this a map that shows the last 30 days of precipitation expressed as a percent of normal. You can see that across North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, we've got an area in through here that's seen between 150 and some locations approaching 300% of normal precipitation. Take a quick look, though, around the rest of the country as to where it is dry, though. That's going to be a critical part of this long-range forecast I'm going to share with you in just a few moments. Our last week, a lot of the heavier rains stayed to the south. Okay, so we, for the most part, were able to skirt some of the heavy rains over the last 7 days here, as it again went to our south, and then this right through here through the Appalachian Mountains with some heavier precip. But where are we going in this next week? Well, let's talk temperatures first. Over the last 7 days, we've been quite cool. So the cloudy conditions, the cooler conditions, that's certainly been in place. But you can see the warmth that is stretching here in parts of the central and northern plains getting to the Canadian prairie. And as you know, these weather patterns at vector move to the east. And so we're expecting to get some of that broad scale warmth over to our side of the country here very, very soon. But I was watching what that warmth did here on satellite, and I just want to show you, our snowpack is gone here in the northern plains. It's eroding here in the upper Midwest around the Great Lakes. Even in the Northeast, we can see it starting to fade, and it's going to change a lot in the Northeast over the next several days here. But as I was watching this satellite animation, I did see something interesting a bit farther to your south and east, and I want to zoom in there and show you what I'm talking about. You see this animation, and you can see a few of them up here in parts of South Carolina as well. A lot of controlled burns going on right now. And what's interesting about the animation is you can see the smoke. That's pretty clear. But I want you to notice that as we go through the southeast, the smoke is blowing from north to south. You come over here into parts of Louisiana, Mississippi, it's blowing east to west. And then in Arkansas, it's blowing south to north. And what's happening here is there was a big high-pressure cell that was sitting right in this area, and the flow around it is clockwise. And you're just seeing the surface winds respond to that. Now, that high-pressure cell will be critical to your upcoming week's precipitation pattern. But under that, early this morning, we did have some pretty chilly temperatures here in North Carolina. And just over the last hour or so, the National Weather Service did remove from South Carolina the frost freeze warnings that were in place early this morning. But notice in the Central Plains, we're expecting, well, that's all red flag warning in there. So the fire threat is relatively high on strong winds that are to our west here. Now I want to show you those winds because this is the setup. You notice that here, over the next 5 days, our accumulated wind gusts are down on the low end of the spectrum here. It's going to be quite, well, calm and clear and dry. And all the action is going to be here under these stronger winds that are going to occupy the midsection of the country. And so as we look out as to what's causing this, it's this. There's this trough that's cutting through. It's very broad and very slow, and it's going to just eject into the Central Plains, and it's going to target this section of the country with very active weather while we sit under higher atmospheric pressure. And then the second wave that's still sitting here up near the Aleutian Islands, it's going to come down into a very similar fashion. But we're going to have to see where that second wave gets to by the time we get into week 2, because that could change up the precip pattern here for parts of the Mid-Atlantic and the Carolina coast. All right, next 7 days from the Weather Prediction Center. So this is straight out of the National Weather Service. You see the main target right here. We're drier, possibly until the weekend. Let's go look at another model. This is the European model. The precip that you see coming in here is very late in the week. You can see the effect of the higher pressure over the southeast, whereas right in through the mid-south, getting back over into the plains, very, very wet in this area. And if I just show you, let's take the drawing up there. Here's the difference between the European and the GFS. Pretty similar story overall. There's the GFS. Here's the European. And what you notice is that when we do get a chance for precip, it's coming in several days from now. So let's take a look at it. here's that high pressure cell I was mentioning. In fact, I can just click play on this and we can just watch along here. This is Tuesday, getting into Wednesday, Thursday. I mean, all the actions here, we're still protected under this high pressure. We'll go all the way into probably the day on Friday. This is now Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, and evening. We might get some showers coming through as the frontal boundary. There'll be a stalled out boundary that connects all the way back from like New England to Colorado, and it might push through us by Saturday, bringing in lightly scattered precip. But we may have to wait until next week as this deeper low comes out of the plains, and it might put a bunch of snow from Colorado here through the north central plains. On Monday going into Tuesday, that the rain finally gets to us. So that's a long time to go without getting rain. And for many of us, it will be welcomed and allow us to get a lot of field work in and some crops planted that we've been delayed because of the cooler and wetter weather. All the snow's back here. I just thought you would see this. My goodness, possibly on the Front Range here in Colorado, in Nebraska. I mean, the models are putting out big snowfall amounts, but that's way to our west. But I want to let you see what some other people in the country are going to be going through. Now, one thing I do notice here is that about day 10, this would be mid-March, this would be the 18th. Excuse me. We see a deeper trough kind of anchored over, the Hudson Bay. And there's a ridge just off the coast, but these troughs are going to come sweeping through. So this means into week 2, our precipitation chances begin to increase, and you start to see wetter conditions taking over again. So this seems to be a week where we want to go after it, given the drier conditions that are in play, at least for those fields that have drained from the extremely wet conditions we had been experiencing up to this point in the year, because week 2 is now favoring wetter conditions again. And just to point this out, this is going to be the week ending on March 22nd. So that's the time period we're talking about here. Now, let's come back to temperatures before we stretch this out even farther. Today is the transition day. So we still are cool along the coast, warmer the farther west you go, but look at the heat that's in the central plains. As I let this one go into the day from Monday, watch this, on Tuesday, we got temperatures back up in the mid-upper 60s. Here come the 70s into Wednesday and Thursday. We then get into Friday. I'm really quite jealous of the way you're going to finish the week. Now, I'm going to get the nice weather in the beginning of it here in Champaign where I live. But as you can see toward the end of the week, the warmer conditions are moving there. And as the snow builds into this area, we're going to be seeing some cooler temperatures there, although it'd be difficult to understand how quickly it might melt, but we'll think back about that. You do notice that after the end of the weekend, we do get a shot at some cooler air that's coming through, and I think we're going to see that through the middle of the month here. Because as we look out there, while day 5 through 10 in the GFS says brief shots at cooler air, same situation here from the European. We see that going out there from day 10 to 15, we might be able to let a little bit cooler air come across at times. Although remember, cool air in the third week of March is not like cool air in the third week of February. So this is a much different scenario here, just knocking temperatures back a few degrees overall is what we're currently seeing as we work our way into that third week of March. Now, beyond that, the models want to go right back over to more mild conditions. This is now looking out there past the 25th of the month. And again, it's just saying, bring that warmth back into place, but keep this area active. And therefore, I'm concerned that through the remainder of March, we could be seeing better chances at staying wetter than average. Now, this time period I'm forecasting, week 3, week 4, week 5, and 6, is one of the most challenging time periods over which we can forecast. And as I transition into a long-term view, I want you to remember this figure. It's from the University of Columbia. And what it looks at here is it looks at how forecast scale changes as a function of time. Now, I think we're all very clear that as you get away from day 1 and you get out there past day 7, 8, 9, forecast skill drops off pretty quickly. Where it's most challenging to forecast is right here. We call this the subseasonal to seasonal timescale. It's week 2 to week 8. And during that time period, it's almost impossible for the models to pick up on the high impact events. But when you get beyond that and you look at these seasonal outlooks, which I'm about to share with you, we're blending together months of data, which means this is only going to shift based on ocean temperature pattern changes or broad scale, I'm talking large cellular wind changes on planet Earth, or changes in what happens here with our drought conditions or the initial conditions. So see that as the setup, because now what I want to show you is how well the models do. February. This was the forecast for this February, made at the beginning of January when all the new data are released. You're like, okay, well, it picked up on the warmer conditions there and the warmer conditions in the southwest and maybe some warmer conditions in northern plains. Well, what happened is over here on the right. Okay, got this. We're doing okay here. But that brutally cold Arctic outbreak, which might become one of the top 5 most expensive weather disasters in U.S. history, you're saying, well, why didn't it pick up on that? And what I'm telling you is these models can't. They're not able to do that. So we always look at them for patterns and then watch the 2-week forecast for the more extreme events. That is how you use this information. Now, this is the new April, May, and June forecast. And you do see where it is trying to anchor the warmest air. You look over there along the coast, the Carolinas, and we see more normal April, May, and June temperature patterns. That's what we're seeing currently. This was just released on Friday. What about precipitation? Well, my analysis would suggest that if you are east of that half circle I drew, in other words, in this direction from it, our planting windows are going to be tight. It seems as though that's going to be a more active corridor, Ohio River Valley, stretching to the mid-Atlantic to the northeast, and that's going to clip us in the Carolinas. We see drier conditions south and over the southwest and over the high plains, and that's something that's got me quite concerned given the drought that's in place there. Now look at this. This is June, July, August. Now you're noticing that it is not forecasting above average temperatures for the Carolinas. All the heat's in the plains and in the northwest. And with that, let me show you what the models think is going to happen. It's expecting, with all that heat going here, an active monsoon, which is going to shift the trough ridge pattern around. And you notice that right now we're currently forecast to have a very wet June, July, August. You're east of the Mississippi River here. It's looking quite wet at this point. Now I start to ask myself why this is the case. And I think it boils down to the fact that the model was initialized with all of this drought. 60% of the country's in drought. The northern plains, widespread. Upper Midwest, widespread. And then look at the four corners to California. We've had dust storms in the high plains of Texas, New Mexico, Colorado, Kansas. And then you know what we've experienced. 150 to 300% of normal rainfall. Now I look at all of that and then I think about what else is going on. Ocean temperature patterns. We're very warm in the North Atlantic. We've got cool water off the coast and a kind of fading La Nina. To show you how much it's fading, take a look at this. I took the March 5th ocean temperatures and then subtracted from them the January 5th. You can see this La Nina has been warming considerably, and it's fading right now. The Southern Oscillation Index is diving back down toward neutral. You say, well, when you look at the Northern Hemisphere, look at all the blue. Well, that's seasonal. That's what should be expected. When you go from January 5th to March 5th, it gets cooler because of the lag due to the specific heat of water. But this area right here, we got to watch carefully. And despite the cooler, colors you see there, remember, it's still warm in this area. So now I start to build on that idea. And I look out here and I say, all right, when we looked, did the models pick up on that? Well, they did. They saw this as being warmer. They saw that as warmer. They saw the weakening La Nina. They missed this, but they did have that cooler corridor in through here. And I say, all right, what do they have all the way to June, July, August? Well, you see the warmth there? If the warm water in the North Pacific continues to nudge its way toward the Pacific Northwest, that'll send the jet stream into more frequent ridgings west. And if that happens, it'll try to dive here over the Great Lakes states in midsummer. But if we got warm water in place here, well, what we have to start thinking about is what that might mean. What that might mean for the high pressure cell that typically sits here. The current European model long-range forecast wants to make an expansive and large high pressure cell here. We call this the Bermuda High, the subtropical high. And what it's doing, one of the reasons why we look so wet on the East Coast, is it's driving a lot of tropical activity in that direction. If there is a weak La Nina and low wind shear here, I'm kind of drawing these dashed lines, we could have an active tropical cyclone season once again. Now, does it mean that we're expecting to have, a 2020 season? No. It's just an early season indicator I want to watch. Okay, now onto that South American map. Extremely wet over the last month where we're trying to harvest a crop, and I just colored over the fact that over the next week we're seeing above average precipitation. This has slowed the harvest. This has actually been detrimental to some fields that have actually been, I saw some reports that they've been abandoned. They're not going to be able to get in to get the grain out because of how wet it's been in some places. What's the effect? It's just pulling back on what could have been a huge crop in Brazil for soybeans. We are dry in southern Brazil and sections of Argentina in through here, including Paraguay and Uruguay, those countries too. And that's an area that we've been quite concerned about as of late, as seeing some patchy dryness. I did some NDVI analysis this morning to see that. Well, what is being talked a lot about is that the week 2 forecast pattern is attempting to bring in wetter conditions to the west of that line. And that could hit some prime ground, for example, Buenos Aires, Cordoba, even parts of Santa Fe, which are right in through here, where I just circled, those 3 circles kind of denote where Argentina's most productive corridors for corn and soybeans specifically. And as we look back here, it's going to get wetter in southern Mato Grosso and then Mato Grosso do Sul, which means Mato Grosso of the south. And what we've got is that might continue to delay harvest and then the planting of the safrinha corn and cotton crop. So South America continuing to throw some wild cards into this and maybe is supportive in the markets. I think if there's a weather story, it's coming from South America right now. But now that you've seen the new long-range analysis, we can build that in as well. And it just gives us a preliminary idea. It's just the bigger picture things that I'm watching, and I just want to keep you aware of what I'm thinking might happen for this upcoming spring and summer. Hey, have a great rest of your week. I'll talk to you again on Monday. Enjoy the nice weather that's coming. All right, thanks.